All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for webinar number 5 of 8, Run a Great Sales Meeting. So we have been through a number of the steps of the optimal ad sales process. At the very beginning, we talked about our competition, Facebook, Google, our local competitors, packaging, pricing, put together our packages to hit our goal at the end of the year. Talked about CRMs and our general methodology when achieving those ad sales goals. And then last time, if you can remember, we actually had a couple of webinars between this time and last time. But last time we talked about getting the meeting. So that was all about, like, when I reach out to somebody, what can I say to hopefully help them take 15, 20, 30 minutes out of their day to discuss their marketing goals with me. And we talked a little bit about why we want to get a meeting in the first place, primarily because we want to learn more about our client before we try and sell them something. And for a lot of people who are unacquainted with ad sales, when we get the meeting, sometimes they kind of combine those two. They try to reach out to somebody and sell something at the same time. We're kind of breaking this up into baby steps, if you will. Getting the meeting, learn about the client. The actual meeting where we do that learning, we ask as many questions as we can, tell them a little bit about us, and then move on to proposals closing. But this is we're kind of in the part of the webinar series that's probably one of my, my favorite 3 segments, because this is the part that's traditionally associated with sales. So today is all about how do I run an effective meeting. And joining us, as always, is Annette Batson from Annette, all-star sales rep at Annette, at Annette. And Annette, as we move through, feel free to chime in on anything to lend your expertise. And one thing we always do is keep an eye on that chat widget. So if you see that chat widget within Zoom, we always have some Q&A pop up. Definitely go ahead and ask any questions if you have questions about the specific slide, whether it's for myself or Annette. It's always good to have a conversation in there. And sometimes a conversation in the chat is as good as the webinar content itself. So I always keep an eye on that as we move through. So how do I run an effective meeting? First, we're going to do a brief review. Again, it's been a couple of weeks since our last webinar. What did we discuss last time that kind of led us up to today? Let's define what an effective meeting is, first of all, and then outline one. What are the general steps you can move through, especially if you're new to this process? Having a kind of game plan going into a meeting is really good. And for the people out there who like to plan and not just wing it, I'm one of them. I am a lot more comfortable going in with a plan, even if things don't always go according to plan. And then what are the next steps at the end of the meeting? And what do we do when we wrap up? If somehow you have not heard about 10 advantages, because I mention it in every single webinar, definitely take a look at it, broadstreetads.com/10-advantages. What are your advantages as a niche publisher? Because you definitely have a lot of advantages, and probably not just 10, but we outline probably the 10 most potent, with also a really good analysis of Facebook and Google's models, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and more importantly, how your strengths match or play to their weaknesses. So 10 advantages, not a marketing piece, very in-depth, and I did that again. I clicked on it as opposed to just moving on to the next slide. So let's review. Why is a meeting the next step, right? So why do I have to have a meeting? And we'll define a meeting. We have a slide up here, but I'll just say it now. Meeting could be a phone call. It could be a screen share, something virtual, especially nowadays, or it could be an in-person meeting. But
Right. I was just going to say, with the C-19 crisis, they're probably all going to be virtual at this point, and so that puts even more pressure on you to, tighten your objectives and tighten your kind of your speech, not speech, but how you present yourself. So you have to be really convincing, effective, and trustworthy over the phone or on a Zoom meeting.
Right, and in a strange way, sometimes you can see something like that as an opportunity, because it's also going to knock everybody off their game. Your competitors who have been doing this for a while, now that they do have to take that virtual approach, if you can tighten up, how you run this meeting, be very to the point, concise, very professional. If you can kind of like hit your A game on a virtual meeting, you're going to be ahead of everyone else, because when something like this happens and it throws everybody for a loop, it's your opportunity to really stand out. So, and thank you for that, Annette, by the way. So why can't I just ask somebody to buy by email? Again, we're taking it a little bit slower. We're breaking out into baby steps. We don't, again, as I've said before, we don't want to ask somebody to marry us on the first date, or even like, the ask for the first date. We want to go ahead, learn about them first of all, and we want them to learn about us. And then we'll move it to that next step, which still isn't really asking them to buy. Our goal isn't to sell, it's to help them be successful in achieving their marketing goals. And there's actually a quote in 10 Advantages where Scott Broadbeck from ARL Now said that the best, and he said it much better than that, more eloquently. But our goal is to help them be successful in achieving their goals. And every business owner has goals, and they might actually not know what they are. It could be, of course, getting more customers. It could be promoting something or telling people about what they're doing. They have those goals, and the meeting is a great place to kind of like pull those out of them. It's hard to help somebody if we don't know what they need. And another frequently used analogy, it's kind of like being a doctor prescribing something without actually knowing what the symptoms are. So instead of like asking them to buy or asking them to work with us, we need to know about them and what they want to achieve, because ultimately if they work with us, they're going to do it because they believe that the money spent with you is going to help them achieve that goal. And if you do that, that's going to keep them on board as repeat customers. And every single Broadstreet customer relies on repeat customers. There are no spare customers. We want to keep everybody on board. So we need to learn as much as we can about them to deliver a great proposal, but also keep them with us in the long run. And again, we're taking it slow, non-committal. Nobody likes to be put on the spot. So at no point during this meeting are we just going to ask them to give us a hard yes or no. So something that's helpful for the meeting: media kits. They are not required, but it is helpful. If you don't have a media kit, have something to show the advertiser. I love visuals, and I think sometimes visuals can do a better job than I can describing what it is that I'm trying to talk about. So media kits do a really good job of like maybe outlining where some ad positions are go, or what some sponsored content might look like, or what your general process is. You have something physical that you can show the client, but also leave with them at the end of the meeting. Again, it's not required, but if you aren't going to have one, then definitely bring some kind of visual. And a number of our customers will bring some of like Broadstreet's like spec'd up ad formats or mocked up ad formats. They'll say, okay, let's put together an amazing cube and show the client what this might look like during the sales meeting. And that's very effective. So always have something to show the client. And thank you, Tiffany, for posting that sample of a media kit. There are all of these links here. I think Tiffany will probably post those one by one in the chat if you'd like to take a look. Some are online, some are digital. And here's that one slide defining meeting: phone call, screen share, in-person meeting. Probably not going to be a whole lot of in-person meetings. In fact, we wouldn't recommend it over the next few months. They're mostly going to be phone calls and screen shares. Screen shares, if you feel comfortable with that. Phone calls are great. Some advertisers are fine with phone calls. If you can do a screen share, that is very helpful. Zoom has been fantastic for Broadstreet. We used to use like GoToWebinar and Join Me, but Zoom for screen sharing software, which probably gotten a lot of usage, especially with all the work from home activity these days. Zoom has been fantastic. No issues recording. And has worked out really well. No connectivity issues, audio issues. Generally, everybody has used it before, so there's no, not a whole lot of "I can't hear you" kind of stuff going on, which can always be a problem with those virtual meetings. So Zoom has been great if you do need a recommendation on holding one of those virtual meetings. So let's define an effective meeting and what that ideal outcome is, right? An effective meeting: at the end of one, the client has learned about you and your mission, right? So remember how going back a couple of weeks, we saw that totem pole. It showed all of the things that a business owner has to do on a given day. And I don't remember the exact steps of that totem pole, but at the very top of the totem pole are your day-to-day fires, right? Business owner comes into work And there it is, the emergency that we have to deal with. That's at the top of the totem pole. And then beneath that is the stuff that they actually want to do that day. And then a series of other things. And then the very bottom of that totem pole is us, because we're pretty much irrelevant, and they haven't heard of us yet, right? So we're always at the bottom of the totem pole as salespeople, or at least we probably should assume we are, and that it's always that kind of like uphill climb, but we're very optimistic we're going to make our way up to the top. At the end of a meeting, the client has learned about us and our mission, so that like we become a little bit more relevant, which is helpful now, but also in the future. But importantly, they understand what makes us different. And there's kind of a formula to doing this that I think is extremely effective. And I'll explain that in the next few slides, but we want them to understand where we stand out, why they should work with us, right? Because if they do take the time out of the day to speak to us, we want them to come away, understand that if they work with us, this is why they're going to do it. And so many salespeople fail to do this piece, right? They fail to really set why it is that they are the person to work with. So nothing really sticks in the potential advertiser's head or the potential buyer's head. But importantly, we also want to understand the client's needs, meaning their pain points, their interests, what has worked for them in the past, what hasn't worked for them in the past, all of that information, because this becomes fuel for our proposal, right? We're going to put together a proposal at the end of this meeting, and that's the last step here, that not at the end of the meeting, but that's going to be the next step we move toward. And that proposal eventually is going to do the selling for us. And if you're skeptical of proposals, and there are many people who operate without a proposal, that's totally fine if you feel comfortable doing that. I think it's a fantastic step, because it can say what you want it to say every time in the same way, outline who you are, what you do in a single document. It's all in front of the advertiser. And you can also put in those things that they were interested in. You can avoid things that didn't work in the past. You can put in things that they think might work. You can put that all into a proposal, and it's a nice part of that repeatable sales process. And Annette, it sounded like you might say something.
Yeah, I just want to say also it really helps to do your homework. Learn about the company that you're trying to win as a client. Go on their website, go on their Instagram. If you live in the same town, go in the store. You probably have some streetwise intel about what people are saying or feeling about that business that would help you, and maybe you can bring something to the table. And also, as you approach this process, think about when you went on a job interview. What did you do to prepare? Because you're really, you're going for a job interview here. You want them to hire you to take control of their advertising budget and help them meet their marketing goals. So before you go on a job interview, you always find out, about the person you're going to meet with. You look them up on LinkedIn, or you look up, Google their name, Google the company. Just try and be as well prepared as possible, so that they know you've done your homework. You really are there to help them, not just, get their ad dollars.
Right. That is such a good point. And I like that perspective, seeing it as, obviously you want to help them. This is not about selling an ad. This is about being hired in some fractional capacity to be in their corner of the ring and help them do the thing that they don't have time to do. If they knew how to run an effective campaign all by themselves, like maybe they would find the time to do it. But most business owners won't do that. They're hiring you to help them here. So really, really good point. So let's define a meeting outline. And I know Annette had previously thought this was a little rigid, but I'm the type who likes to go in with a plan, to be a little practiced, a little prepared. It just makes me feel more comfortable anytime that I'm going to enter into some kind of sales meeting.